on Sean is a fresher breath of air. He just loved chain restaurants. Matter of fact, he ate at Applebee's 12 times during the bye week.
I love each and most of you guys.
That really is still swollen, isn't it? It kind of looks like a football, actually.
Thank you for that.
Stitching, you got it.
Thank you.
Look,
Hey, D, I like donuts, baby. Let's go.
Stay focused. Work hard in school. You might not like school, but make sure you're working hard at school.
Them bills are bomb. Them bills are bomb.
It's your boy DM3, and you're listening to the Witty Not Funny Sports Podcast on the Built in Buffalo Podcast Network.
Witty Nation, welcome to Witty Not Funny Sports Live, presented by Traveling Growler. We are the #1 self-rated Buffalo sports show covering the Bills, Sabres, entertainment, and everything in between. And as always, part of the Built in Buffalo Podcast Network. Go follow us on Twitter at WittySports716, right down there. Make sure you check out everything Built in Buffalo is giving you every single day. The best Bills content out there. Training camp's kicking off. It's the best time to be a Bills fan. Until the season starts, then it's a better time to be a Bills fan. And then when we win games, it's even a better time to be a Bills fan. But you get the gist. Follow everything Built in Buffalo is doing at Built in Buffalo _. Also, check out the Witty Not Funny store for the best Bills and Sabres original designs. Gear up for training camp. Gear up for the season. Teespring.com, Witty Not Funny, or Google search Teespring, Witty Not Funny, all one word. Check out all our designs. Support the pod today. We have a very special show for you tonight. We have a very special guest. Of course, Tony is still in Italy, trekking the European nation and eating baguettes and saying oui, and whatever they do out in Italy. But he will be back next week. So we figured let's make this easy on everyone and replace a Tony with a Tony. And if Tony Danza wants to come on next week as a guest and keep this Tony train rolling, he is more than welcome to. So invitation extended, Tony Danza. But we welcome our guest, host this week from Cover One, host of the Film Room, Disguise Coverage. He is the greatest describer and breaker down of plays on Bill's Twitter that I follow. And more importantly, he is an OG guest of this podcast, Mr. Anthony Farhaska. Anthony, did I pronounce that correctly?
You nailed it.
Farhaska?
You nailed it.
Nailed it. I knew I would. Anthony, welcome back, man.
Thanks for having me. I'm pumped to be here. I like the like for like, swap a Tony with a Tony. And, you mentioned the OG guest piece. I went back through our Twitter DMs and was scrolling. We first started interacting in October of 2019. Before I was even doing like Bill stuff. That was back when I was still hosting that podcast with my buddy Alex, and we were doing like wrestling and sports and a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, we were doing like, you and I were doing like review swaps and trying to help promote each other's stuff. So yeah, we go way back to October of 2019, which is absolutely wild.
It's making me feel real old. It's like realizing like Bronny James is in the NBA now.
Yeah, and Frank Gore Jr. is a Bill. Yeah,
Frank Gore Jr. That's a good one. I'm like, oh my gosh, do I feel old? 2019. Oh, we were young. Oh, when we were young.
Yeah, almost 5 years.
It's great to have you back on. I know you attended Bills training camp. We have an awesome show. We're going to have some fun tonight as Bills football is finally back. The Bills are back at St. John Fisher. Started training camp this week. We're going to talk all about the first couple of days here. Anthony got to attend training camp this week, and we'll get his thoughts, of course, on how the team looks. I mean, how a bunch of dudes in shorts with no pads looking in glorified walkthroughs look, but we'll get some idea. And of course, we'll get into some players you may or may not have heard of, or maybe you should be paying more attention to, I think is a better way to put it. Players you should be paying more attention to. We'll get onto that later in the show. And we're going to switch it up a little here. Typically, we do our summer series #draft season, SZN, to kick things off. But we're going to do that later on the show because we are a show of the people, for the people, and we know Bills fans and viewers want to talk camp. Before we get started, though, make sure if you haven't yet, take 1 second, hit follow, hit like, hit subscribe, follow us on Twitter, all our social media channels, follow YouTube, Facebook. Just give a like. We really appreciate you. And of course, as in this show, we do things a little differently and less X's and O's. And we brought Anthony on because he is the X's and O's guy. He's really good at that stuff. So if we get ridiculous and Anthony gets super serious, we're going to have a fun little dichotomy here. So It's going to be fun. So, Anthony, I want to kick it off with training camp. I mean, that is the topic that is on everyone's mind. The Bills are back out on the field. Josh is looking as Hollywood star as ever with his facial hair back and the long flowy hair back, and he looks like $1,000,000. He looks like a star. He is a star. It's great to see everyone back out there. Matt Milano we'll get into and all that. But I really want to start off with this offense because that is kind of the most important thing to me, because not only do we have a new offensive coordinator with Joe Brady, but we have a lot of new personnel, almost whole new wide receiver room, and some new schemes, some new offensive line shifts in terms of position, with Connor McGovern going to center and David Edwards slotting in, or whoever decides to fill in that guard spot. So I want to talk about the Joe Brady offense to kick it off here as we talk about camp. And we heard Joe Brady speak earlier this week during training camp, and he mentioned a lot of like a fluid, positionless offense. And I kind of wanted to get your thoughts and what you've seen so far at training camp in terms of this fluid, positionless offense, because as listeners and viewers of this show know, last year the bar was very low in our opinion with Ken Dorsey. Maybe you've had some game tape thoughts, but from a casual viewer, on the screen perspective, Ken Dorsey was very bad at running offenses, and Joe Brady had to kind of pick up the pieces midseason. So now that Joe Brady has had time to acclimate his version of this offense and get his personnel in here that he thinks can run a successful offense, what is this positionless, fluid offense looking like to you? And is it something that can be successful moving forward?
Yeah, I think it can be successful. And I think a lot of it comes through with, if you talk about like fluidity and positionless, I like to look at it more in terms of interchangeability and what you can do with the body types and the skill sets that they have. And when you look at specifically with the wide receivers and the tight ends, if you look at those two groups together, what you have is, for the most part, a lot of like for like in terms of you have size, you have frame, and you have athleticism. Honestly, like Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir are kind of like the outliers. If you combine the wide receiver room and the tight end room, like granted, Kincaid and Knox are bigger than, Hollins and MVS and Coleman, but they're all in that same kind of idea of like bigger bodied frame, like length, strength, but mixed with athleticism. And then the skill set piece comes in of all of those guys are able to play as pass catchers, but then also function as blockers in the run game. Samuel also falls into that boat. It's one of the first things Joe Brady talked about when he was signed, is how, he's a good blocker and he doesn't get recognized for it. Khalil Shakir got better as a blocker as last season went along. And I think that coincided with him getting more playing time and more reps. And so I think what you have for this offensive grouping, and I've spent so much of this offseason talking about this next specific piece that I'm going to say, it's, kind of basing the offense, not becoming a run first team, but basing the offense out of the run game, more condensed formations, reducing your formational width, and leaning into those body types and those skill sets that you have where you can put a defense into a bind with the run and the pass. Very a la, what the Rams do and what the Lions do. And granted, the Rams have some really tremendous players and have Sean McVay, and the Lions have some tremendous players, a great offensive line and Ben Johnson. But what both those offenses have are skill set players that thrive in the run and the pass. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, for as good as they are as pass catching pieces in the pass game, they're both very, very, very good run blockers. And then you take the Detroit Lions. Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the best receivers in football, is a dog in the run game. He will erase a nickel. He will crack on a safety. He blocks his ass off, and he's good at it. And then on the Lions, their second and third receivers with the most snaps last year were Josh Reynolds and Donovan Peoples-Jones. Big-bodied, physical type of receivers. And that allowed them to live in 11 personnel and still run the football down your throat. The Rams, same thing. The Rams had a 95% 11 personnel rate last year, even when Cooper Kupp was hurt and not playing, because they had these bigger bodied receivers like Nacua, Van Jefferson before he got traded. And then even Tutu Atwell was a small guy, blocks his ass off. What the Bills are going to be able to do with 11 and 12 is access more of the menu without having to turn the page. You can be in 11 and you can go tight and run the ball down someone's throat in a variety of ways. Or you can be in 11 and go spread. You can be in 12 and be tight and run the ball down someone's throat, or you can go and spread. And then a defense has to figure out, okay, can our nickel corner fit the run and handle Knox and Kincaid and Coleman and Hollins and MVS and Samuel and even Shakir as blockers, but then can they also handle them in coverage? If they can't handle them as blockers, do we need to put a bigger dude in there, like a big nickel or a big safety or another linebacker? And then that's even more like, okay, but how much are we stressed in the pass game now? And I think that's where everything stems from. And it's a fun conversation to have. And then it all comes back to Joe Brady, because I really do think this season depends on him pushing the right buttons and pulling the right levers when it comes to the offense. I think it's a group that isn't bad from a skill set perspective, but it's definitely a group where like the sum is greater than the individual parts. You don't have that Stephon Diggs. You don't have that premier established one. So it's a lot of this game works for this guy. This next game works for this guy. We have guys that we can create mismatches with, and it'll be on Brady to figure out how to get them into the right positions at the right time.
I like that, because towards the end of Dable's reign as OC here, it seemed like he was gung-ho on creating mismatches out there. And whether that's from a positional standpoint or a size standpoint or an athleticism standpoint, it was always doing something to create a mismatch. And I like the diversity that this group has. Wide receivers, let's just call them pass catching weapons. In terms of size, and if the size people who have the wide catch radius, like a Keon Coleman or a Mac Hollins, get covered, whatever gets them taken out of the play, then we offer some speed variants with maybe a KJ Hamler if he ends up making the team, or Curtis Samuel, who at Ohio State was so dynamic. It was like Tavon Austin level-esque college tape.
Tavon Austin, man. Tavon Austin was the coolest college highlight dude ever.
He was. It was really cool. He was the best. But no, just the Swiss Army knife-ification of that position of you can line him up anywhere wide, you can line him in the slot, you can line him in the backfield, and nobody really knows what he's going to do or where he's going to go except the quarterback who's throwing him the ball or running the play. And then Khalil Shakir, who we hope is the next really great slot receiver taking over for Cole Beasley, offers great route running. Anthony, I don't know how much you follow our show, but we have deemed Khalil Shakir the he-wolf, because Shakira is the she-wolf.
Well done.
And Khalil Shakir is the he-wolf. So anytime we mention Khalil Shakir, we have to mention hashtag he-wolf. That is his official nickname on this show.
I like it.
And I saw a post, I don't know who it was from, in one of the major media outlets, or maybe it was from one of the Bills' Twitter outlets, of by the end of the season, Khalil Shakir will be a top blank receiver. And us, the answer is one. He's the best receiver there is. He can do no wrong. Every catch he makes is the greatest catch in the world, and he is the greatest thing ever. And he will be a national phenomenon this year. Will the he-wolf. So Khalil Shakir, just having him in a more prominent role makes this offense even that much greater. So no, I like the diversity this pass catching group offers. And then you get in the backfield too of James Cook, and will he be more involved in the pass game? We saw that last year as Joe Brady took over, of running backs getting more involved in the pass game. And I think from what I've read, that's translated to this season as well. Now, I hope James Cook has hit the jugs machine every day this offseason, because there were some untimely drops, if you will. But I like his involvement in the passing game. I like getting him on linebackers, where if you put him on a linebacker, he's quicker. And if you go Kincaid on a linebacker and open up James Cook to a cornerback, like it just, there's a lot of things they can do. There's a lot of pieces that can be moved here, and a lot of looks they can give opposing defenses, I think, to help maybe quell the lack of talent or not having that number one receiver that we have in Diggs. So I really like what they're bringing. I'm super optimistic about what they can do this year on offense.
Yeah, I think there's a reasonable level of like hope and kind of positive expectation around this offense, just because of the variability that you have and the functionality in terms of mismatch creation in the run, in the pass. You talk about James Cook, even Ray Davis. Like, Ray Davis is a better pass catcher out of the backfield than he gets credit for. And then you tie it in with what they're able to do. And even Ty Johnson, who I really like, is like an E. I'm fine with Ty Johnson as an RB2, let alone like an RB3. Yeah. But I think with having the ability to be a threat on the ground and a threat in the air as an offense, to be as complete as possible, I think that's going to be huge for this team. And then being able to be scheme diverse, like granted, the O-line is different than last year, and we'll see how it plays out. But being able to run zone concepts and being able to run gap scheme concepts, and then now having these bigger bodied receivers that allow you to stay diverse. And if you go condensed formations, you have more guys near or attached to the line of scrimmage, which means your run game menu and playbook expands even further, but then you still have the pass options within that. And then you can build the play action game off of it and marry more to the run and the pass. That for me was always my biggest thing with Ken Dorsey. I do think he gets way more hate than he deserved. I think he had his warts, and I had specific issues with him that I started with in his first season back in like October. But my biggest thing was always the Bills had a really good run game under him, and it felt like it just always took him forever to get into it in a game and or pivot to it or establish it. That was kind of always my biggest thing. And I had some others as well, but it was nice to see Brady kind of leaning into the run when he needed to lean into the run. In terms of volume, they didn't all of a sudden like just completely change offensively, which they couldn't, because, you know, you can't uninstall an offense and install a new one in week 10 or 11 mid-season. It's impossible. But I think committing more to the run when you should commit more to the run really paid dividends for this offense. And I think the offense this year starts with that and then builds off of it with that interchangeability between the wide receivers and the tight ends. And again, all of it just with the idea of creating a mismatch for the defense and trying to put as much on their plate in terms of a pregame preparation standpoint as possible. If you have to figure out how to defend the run, and you got to defend zone and gap, and then you also have to figure out how to stop 3 to 5 legitimate options in the pass game, like that's a lot on your plate. And then if you're also adding pre-snap elements in game with motion and shifts and all of these things to help identify coverage or stress communication on the defense or create leverage for the offense, it just becomes almost kind of like sensory overload for the defense. And again, I think that's another spot you have to live in if you're this Bills offense. And again, not to say that they don't have talent, because they do, but you always hear that phrase kind of like Jimmys and Joes, not the X's and O's. And I don't think that applies to the Bills. This isn't one of those teams where it's like, yeah, we have a whole bunch of dudes who can win one-on-one, so it's pretty much just like, let's just drop back, let one of our dudes cook, and we're going to find them. No, I think you have to be schematically sound to make this offense really hum the way you need it to and want it to, which is why, again, I think so much is on Joe Brady in terms of getting this offense to be where it needs to be, and also just kind of getting Allen on the right page, you know, for as disconnected as the offense was last year. Again, some of that was Dorsey. I think not more of it than Dorsey, but just as much, if not close in that conversation, Allen was playing like crap early on. And a lot of it wasn't, I don't think it was Dorsey's fault. Now, granted, you can trace it back up to the top and be like, well, it's Dorsey's job to make sure he's set up for success. And so you can have that conversation if you want. But Allen was missing on like basic JV and varsity level reads early on in the year. And I don't know how much of that stemmed from, was he thinking so much because of how Dorsey's offense was? And was it just kind of restricting him from playing the way he wanted to or needed to play? So if Brady can tap into that more and get him more progression based and not make everything so thoughty and heady for him, and simplify things with some easy buttons and things schematically to kind of be like, hey, we're going to put this guy in motion. He's going to be wide open because of X, Y, and Z. Boom. All you got to do is snap the ball and throw it to Curtis Samuel in a half a second and you're good to go. More of that stuff, I think, kind of frees up Allen a little bit and also ties into the whole interchangeable nature that stresses the defense.
I think the two things that drove me nuts with Brady last year, from my standpoint, one, as you mentioned, in-game adjustments, of changing play style, whatever, play calling too late in the game.
You mean Dorsey or Brady? Because you said Brady.
Dorsey.
Okay, cool.
Oh, did I say Brady? I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I was waiting for, I was like, when you started speaking, I was like, he's got to mean Dorsey, but I just want to make sure.
No, I definitely mean Dorsey. Whenever I speak negative, it'll be Dorsey. Whenever I speak positive, it'll be Brady.
Fair.
No, Dorsey's in-game
Yeah.
adjustments of, we'd be down 20 and it's like, okay, now we're going to go up tempo, but there's 8 minutes left in the fourth
Yeah.
quarter. Like those drove me nuts. And then as you spoke to, just and whether this is Dorsey thing or Allen thing, or it never looked comfortable for them. I don't even want to say easy because it's Josh Allen and he's a freak of nature and he makes a lot of things look easy with his arm strength, but it just never looked comfortable. And whether that was Allen, forcing throws or not making reads quick enough, there was never any adjustments.
And so real quick on that, it's like a great piece that connects it is did you happen to listen to Robert Mays when he interviewed Sean McVay for the Athletic Football Show recently?
No, I did not.
If you haven't, you should.
I'll check that out. Yeah.
Phenomenal. But one of the things Sean McVay talks about is how offenses like 6, 7, 10 years ago used to be like from a concept standpoint for a pass play would be like, hey, this side over here beats this coverage. This side over here beats this coverage. So like to your left is a cover 1 beater. To the right is your cover 2 beater. And then Sean McVay talked about how defenses now, they disguise everything pre-snap. So you can't determine what side you're going to go to pre-snap because they disguise so well. But then also because of all the match coverages you see post-snap, it's also hard to diagnose what coverage they're going to be in. And that's why you don't see a lot of those offenses anymore. That's a lot of what the Dorsey offense was, that option-based offense where, hey, Josh, to the left beats this, to the right beats this. It's on you to snap the ball and read. That's hard. The advantage is when it works, it's unstoppable. And Daboll had a lot of that built in as well, especially with option routes, which is why Allen and Beasley were so automatic because they saw everything in sync. They saw the same thing at the same time in the same way, and it was automatic. And again, when you have an offense like that, when it works, it truly is indefensible because you are making your adjustment in your decision based off of what the defense does. So they're wrong no matter what. Like the defense has no shot to succeed. The problem is if you're a little late or a little wrong as a pass catcher or as a quarterback, it gums up the whole works. And I'm actually surprised the Bills offense, because the Bills offense was so strong under Dorsey from an EPA standpoint and advanced metrics standpoint. What killed them is they would stall out with turnovers and they would drive down the field and then something bad would happen with Allen or there'd be a fumble and then that would work against them because their drives were almost too efficient. And they'd go on like a 9-play, 5-minute drive and then kick only a field goal or turn the ball over and you're shooting yourself in the foot. And a lot of that, again, was because you're having to think so much and have to read so much and do so much. And again, that can work. And I'm not saying Allen can't read the game like that, but I don't think that's like Josh Allen isn't Drew Brees. He's not Peyton Manning. He's not those guys where like they are, not that they didn't have physical talent, but where they are just cerebral monsters. Part of what Allen makes Allen is the fact that, I don't know, he plays like a wild horse or like a mutant alien unicorn. So I think Dorsey tried to make things as diverse as he could to take advantage of what he had with Allen, but also kind of painted them into a corner at times. It's weird because like he put so much on their plate so that they could be varied and have all these answers, but also kind of box themselves in at the same time. And then to your point, in their back pocket was like a really good run game. So it'd be like, bro, the pass isn't working right now. Just pivot to that run. And he'd be like, no, we're going to keep doing this thing. And it just like, never like clicked.
Right. It just, I don't know what it was. It just never clicked as right. That's a great way to put it. I don't know. You were talking there and I'm comparing it to like Ken Dorsey's MacGruber and he's just like keeps talking and figuring out things instead of trying to defuse the bomb. Just defuse the bomb, Ken Dorsey.
15 seconds, MacGruber. 10 seconds, MacGruber. And then just boom.
Just do the one thing that works. And that maybe that's like to my point of like, there's never, when things were going bad, there was never just, it never seemed like there was kind of like a really good Madden player has a go-to play, whether it's like an inside slant or a screen pass or something, just high efficiency, high rate.
An easy button, something that you can call and be like, all right, we can get 12 yards on this. I know it. Let's do that.
Just go to it. You know, like with Fitz and Stevie, it was I call it the Stevie slant. It was just like an inside slant and he just lived on that. Like whenever there was bad, bad momentum, just get it back with the Stevie slant, and we're moving the ball down the field.
Yeah.
Dorsey never seemed to implement just that easy button play. I like how you put that.
Yeah,
So
everything just
that's a
felt,
great point.
Even when
Yeah.
they were moving the ball well, and they did, because again, and I know this brought up the whole conversation for Bills fans where like, no, this is why advanced metrics are a lie, and this offense sucks, yada yada. The offense was good under Ken Dorsey. They were highly efficient. The problem was they were so efficient that they matriculated the ball downfield like so much and so often that if they weren't ending in touchdowns, they weren't going to have 7 to 9 drives a game. They were going to have like 5 to 6, which means you got to score on like every single one. And when you would have a turnover or you'd have something that a big sack and it puts you behind the sticks and you're not able to dig yourself out, it would throw them completely off schedule. And even when they had those drives, hey, the Bills scored a touchdown. It wasn't like 5 plays, 70 yards touchdown. It was like 13 plays, 70 yards touchdown. And that's still good, but it's hard to live that way all the time. So even when things were working, it still felt hard. It didn't feel smooth. And again, I think kind of moving in the direction that they have with these body types is also a little bit in line with NFL trends. It's interesting too. Like I would have liked to see what Dorsey would have done to kind of keep everything equal, like what Dorsey would have done this season with this group of pass catchers. Because I think building the roster the way they have offensively is also very in line with what some of the better offenses in the league are doing, like having one or multiple guys that are just mismatch creators in a variety of ways. Like the Niners, for as good as Kyle Shanahan is, Debo is a unicorn. George Kittle is the best all-around tight end in football as a blocker and pass catcher. Christian McCaffrey is ridiculous as an all-around guy. And then they have Kyle Juszczyk, who's this fullback / H-back who can also run routes, who can also block. Right. You can put him in the slot. You can put him outside. The Dolphins do that with Alec Ingold. We talked about the Rams can do it with their receivers, what the Lions can do with their receivers. These offenses that have these players that can live in the light and the dark, either at receiver or tight end or running back. And I think for the Bills, their light in the dark is like, hey, these guys are above average pass catchers and they're also above average run blockers. And that's the way we lean into it. Instead of just having a unicorn or an alien at every position or at a couple of positions, they've just got this multiplicity and versatility. And so it just presents such a different option for this offense than they really have at any point under Josh Allen. In the Dable years, in the Dorsey years, it's really a pivot, and it's very much in line with the league trends that we're seeing offensively from the better offenses in the league.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you think Sean McDermott went to Joe Brady and said, Joe, we'll make you the OC, but we know what you did in Carolina. You made a very bad receiver in Robbie Chosen Anderson, 1,000-yard receiver. So we're not going to give you your typical number one receiver. We're going to give you a bunch of better than Robbie Andersons, and we think you can do great with it.
Yeah, I always wonder about that stuff, like the whole like roster building aspect. Like I wonder, obviously there's input from the coordinators, but I wonder if it's how much is like Brady saying like, get me Curtis Samuel. Like that is my want. Like that's my this. Or if they were like, hey, what about Curtis Samuel? And then he's like, yeah, I could make that work. Yeah. Like let's do Curtis Samuel. I always wonder how much of that.
Yeah. What's that back and forth?
Exactly. And I think
like last year with Dorsey, like they went to try to get JD McKissick, and it's like, that felt like Dorsey going to like, I need this guy to run my offense.
I want this type of back. Like this is the type of thing I want. And then he spurned the Bills, and then Bean was like, all right, cool. We're just going to give Von Miller kick rocks. Like that idea, that give and take and that back and forth is also interesting. And then I also wonder too, how much of it was shaped by like when in the process they knew Stephon Diggs was no longer going to be a Bill. Like, did they like, as soon as you figure that out, how does that change your direction? What was your direction previously? Were they always kind of going into this? Like, did they have end of the year meetings and Joe Brady was like, all right, thanks. Like, Sean, I'll see you. And then like, as he goes to leave, he comes back and he's like, one more thing, like, I really could kind of make this offense work without Diggs and we could go in a completely different direction. But, like, we'll talk about that later. And then he leaves and McDermott's like, huh. And then he's talking with Bean and they're talking about money and all these like things. And Diggs is upset or whatever like comes of it. Yeah. I wonder how much of this is Brady's vision of, they have those end of the year meetings and they're like, whoa, if you would get this job, typical job interview stuff, if you were the OC in 2024, what would you do? I wonder how much of it is him being like, this is the direction the league is taking offensively to counter the pendulum swing that the defenses have taken. I would do X, Y, and Z, yada, yada, yada. Or was it, Bean and McDermott presenting that vision to him and him being like, yeah, I'll play ball with that. And they were like, great, you're hired. I wonder how much of it kind of led to where we are. Because again, it is in line with what we're seeing from the Shanahan tree, and which McVay comes from, but Shanahan and McVay and Ben Johnson and Slowick in Houston, which is also from the Shanahan tree. Yeah, like these guys that are known for being the best offensive minds. They it's not just schematics, it's also the body types that they've acquired and they brought in. And some, again, like I think Miami's a really good example. For as much as it's Hill and Waddle, and obviously they're absolutely tremendous, and then Achane is really great as well. Alec Ingold, their fullback, he's like Kyle Juszczyk light. He allows them to do so much. I remember charting plays for the first Bills-Dolphins game. I think it was like 74% of the time wherever Alec Ingold went, run or pass, the ball followed him. He's heavily involved in a lot of their packages. He's getting out on routes in their RPO flood concepts, and he's running the wheel or he's running the flat route because he presents a mismatch. Not a lot of teams have a nickel that can stand up to him in the run game, and not a lot of teams have a bigger dude like a safety or a big nickel or a linebacker that can stay with them in the pass. And so there's so much of that, and I think the Bills really do have that mismatch creation now. You just got to make sure you have the coordinator who can tap into everything at the right time and maximize it, because you don't have a pure ISO ball, one-on-one winner at this point. Although I do think Kincaid could be that by the end of the year.
Yeah, I would love that. That'd be great, because I think Kincaid is a huge mismatch for opposing defenses. If they want to put a nickel on him, he will out-muscle them and box them out. If they want to put a linebacker on him, he will out-athleticize them. I guess that's a word. I'm going to make it up if it's not.
Make it a word.
Yeah. But he's quicker, more athletic than a linebacker they want to put on. I'm very excited for Kincaid and his potential in a Joe Brady offense. My thought with Stephon Diggs, you were mentioning Stephon Diggs, is Josh Allen went to Sean McDermott and said, hey, I got offered to be on Family Feud. We can't have Stephon Diggs on the team. He's terrible at Family Feud. We need to get him off.
Have you seen his answers? He's killing us in Family Feud. Yeah, get him off.
He's killing us. Even though Keon Coleman came out with a video where he did like a kind of rookie camp mini Family Feud style game, and he isn't as good either. So that's a bad one for one swap.
Bills are a bad Family Feud squad. It's just embarrassing. That's why there's been no Super Bowls. That's really what it comes down to. You just can't win.
That's really what it comes down to. You can't win on Family Feud. You can't win the big one. You can't win the Lombardi Trophy. No, that's a great segue into just kind of what you think about Josh in this offseason, these first couple of days of camp. And we talked about kind of being maybe more comfortable in a Joe Brady offense, or this offense giving Josh some different perspective in terms of looking at the game. So maybe not in a playability standpoint, because Josh is a gazelle and he's got a cannon for an arm and whatnot, but maybe just in like a kind of his mentality standpoint, and he's talked about this often, so that's why I mentioned it, of like stepping up and taking a leadership role. Not that he wasn't a leader before, but really kind of he is Captain Phillips style. I'm the captain now. He's taking over the boat. And so are you optimistic that we'll see a more headier Josh, a smarter Josh, one that has less risky throws? And maybe this goes hand in hand in what Joe Brady is doing. Maybe it's a lot less deep balls and more intermediate, 10 to 15 yard routes with great route runners like Shakir and Samuel. Like, what do you think about Josh's transition from Dorsey and his maybe struggles last season to being optimistic about Brady, or maybe you're not optimistic about Brady and Josh's role in Brady's offense this year?
I am optimistic. I think what hurt what hurt Josh with
you
Dorsey,
did it.
I know, now I did it. Look at me. We got to have the two flubs. We're done. I think what hurt Allen with Dorsey a little bit is they're very like-minded in terms of like wanting to like attack on the front foot at all times. Like Dorsey wants blood on every play, and so does Josh. Like that's the reason the Bills could be up like 35-0, and Allen's like going to the line being like, I want a touchdown on this play. He's not like, all right, cool. Let's work the clock. We're good. Like, he wants everything on a play, and that's the thing that drives him at all times. It's the reason, he's leaping over linebackers and running through dudes. It's also the reason he tries to fit a ball into a window that he has like a 1% chance of making, and it looks like a horrible interception. It's that, I call it the yin and yang of Josh Allen. It just happens to be that more often than not, he makes it happen. And everybody's like, oh my God, that was amazing. But if you're thinking of the process of it, you're like, that was a really stupid decision. He should not have done that. But more often than not, he makes the improbable probable, and it comes out to be amazing. But him and Dorsey were very like-minded with that nature of like, yeah, like let's kill them. Like right now, it's like they're already dying. Like, we're up by 30. We don't need to, no, but blood, give us more. Like, they were very much in that same mindset. I think Brady, just with the nature of his offense, will kind of keep Allen in check a little bit more from a rhythm standpoint, kind of, again, making things easier with him by having more progressions built into the offense and more of the offense that gives him control without allowing him to just be completely, I see red, I want to kill, right? Because if Josh gets the option of being like deep shot or check down, more often than not, he's like, I want deep shot. Doesn't matter. Shot. Yeah. Yep. But he was better in that regard last year. Even under Dorsey, again, this was a highly efficient offense. The reason they were so good in EPA and all these metrics was because Allen was changing himself a little bit, especially after that first Jets game where he basically lost the game for the Bills. He came back those next several weeks and was like, I'm just going to take what the defense gives to me. And Dorsey was a big part of that. I think you'll get more of that with Brady with this offense because there are more easy buttons. I do think there are more opportunities for Allen just to come to the line and know, like, hey, what we're going to do is we're going to send Curtis Samuel in jet motion on this play, and he's going to out-leverage the linebacker, and you're going to hit him in the flat. And if they try to beat that leverage outside and widen with the corner, you're going to hit Dalton Kincaid on the 6-yard hitch. Either way, it's a win. Cool, that's first down. Now it's 2nd and 4, or it's 1st and whatever, or 2nd and 1. Now we're going to, like, those little aspects to kind of keep him in rhythm, keep him on schedule. And then the passing concept being more progression based instead of it being like what I talked about with Dorsey, where it was this over here beats this, that over there beats that. More of kind of like what we saw against the Kansas City Chiefs, where in the regular season game, where you have more flood concepts, more 4 strong, which means where you're putting like 4 eligibles to one side of the field in the route distribution, kind of giving those easy button answers and options where Allen still can go deep, because you're not going to take the Josh Allen out of Josh Allen. He's still going to do Josh Allen things. But I think there will be more naturally baked in answers instead of trying to rein him in and being like, bro, you got to take the check down. I think it'll be baked in a little bit more based on his reads and progression, and he'll naturally kind of take it. And that's what we've seen a little bit in camp thus far. And I also think tying that into Allen's mentality, I do think he wants to play smarter and be more of a quarterback between the ears. And I think that goes hand in hand with, I don't know if it's because of Diggs or not. I do think there is some and this is just a hunch for me. I do think there is some to Allen being like, I want to show that I didn't need Diggs. He hears that stuff of like, did Diggs make Allen? Did Allen make Diggs? Like yada, yada. Like,
sure.
And now he knows the offense is mine. Like Diggs, I'm still very much, I think Diggs gets a bad rap for a lot of Bills fans, especially the ones that were like, oh, he's washed and he was always a problem. Like, hope the door doesn't hit you on the way out type of thing. I don't like that at all. I think for a lot of it, I do think, and some of the players have spoken about it as well. Rasul Douglas and other players that have spoken highly of him and talked about what he was. And they've said, like, he's a dude that's kind of misunderstood. Like, he wants to win at such a high level, and he works so hard that sometimes it just manifests in ways that aren't great. And even though I still like him and appreciate him for that kind of stuff, that can clash, especially if he's clashing with Josh, or if he's making Allen feel like, because I'm sure you've been in those situations, whether at work or a team or a friend group or something, like you want to make a decision for everyone, or you want to make a suggestion, but you know, like there's that one guy in the group that like isn't going to be with it, or like you make a decision and it doesn't work out. Like you guys go see you decide for the friend group, you're going to go see a movie, and the halfway through the movie isn't good. And all you're thinking in your mind is like, Timmy is just going to run his mouth when we leave the theater about how terrible this was. And
it'd be so annoying.
Exactly. And I wonder, like, if Allen throws an incompletion to Kincaid, is he thinking in the back of his head, Diggs is going to come to the huddle?
Chewed out by Steph.
Exactly. And not that that's the end of the world, but maybe that hindered him a little bit.
Sure.
Like, and I think him,
there's a mental aspect of sports. That's a great point.
It's a huge point in sports. And what separates you at this level, granted, everybody's different, but when you get to the NFL, everyone's big, everyone's strong, everyone's fast. What separates the good or the bad from the good and the good from the really good and the really good from the great is the mental side of it more often than not, and how you can apply your technique, how hard do you prepare, and what kind of player you are in between the years. And I think you saw a little bit this offseason where I know some people say he's always been doing this, and he's been doing this all along. I don't think Allen was doing the offseason mechanic work and the whole offseason, like, get everybody together and let's throw. I don't think he was doing it the past several years. Some of that might be injury related because he was trying to nurse some wounds in the offseason. But I think you saw more of a purposeful, deliberate Josh Allen this offseason. Let's get everyone together in Nashville. Let's throw. Let me work on my mechanics and fix some stuff with my base and fix some stuff with my rotation and my throwing motion because I was getting a little long and a little loose with everything. I think there's a more purposeful Allen. And I don't know if it's directly correlated to, like, because I want to show Diggs what's up, or if it's just more of, I know I'm the only alpha now on the offense, so the offense is mine. Like, he and Diggs were both A1 dudes, and they were both alphas. Like, no matter who Stephon Diggs could go into an offense with Tom Brady, and he's going to go back to the huddle and be like, yo, bro, like, that read was wrong. You need to throw me the ball, or you need to do this. Right. Like, now Allen doesn't really, I'm not saying he doesn't have people that aren't going to push him and drive him, but he doesn't have anybody that's going to kind of, like, check him at every single moment and push against him and have that friction. Like, and I wonder if it allowed him to kind of free himself a little bit and take that next step and be like, all right, this is what I need to do to really own the offense, own myself, and then kind of make things holistically come together.
Yeah, I think that those are all great points. I always compared, like, did Allen make Diggs or Diggs make Allen comparison to when Tom Brady left the Patriots. Is like, does Belichick make Brady or does Brady make Belichick? And then Brady went out and won a Super Bowl. So I'm hoping Allen follows the same path here. But no, I always like, last year was a really good point in terms of, like, Stephon Diggs being so vocal with things. And you mentioned he'll go in the huddle with Tom Brady and say, dude, I was open. You threw the wrong route, whatever. It seemed like they're both alpha type of personalities. Josh is just kind of more intrinsically alpha.
He's more reserved.
Steph was more outward alpha. Like, he's more vocal with it. And when Josh is like, okay, I know I threw a pick. Just let me look at the tablet, be with my thoughts, and then I'll kind of.
And that could work too with somebody like Brady was like an outward alpha. So maybe Diggs comes into the huddle and is like, yo, you should have hit me with that ball. And Tom is like, shut up, Diggs. Like, this, and this. And it's like, all right, cool. We'll go out and be fine. But Allen is more reserved with it, like you said. Like, so he'll be like, okay. And then his head is like, man, you suck. I don't need to do this.
Yeah, because sometimes I would be watching and the camera would pan to Josh Allen on the bench. I'd be like, show some emotion. Like, I compare it to, like, I watched the U.S. men's national soccer team, and, like, we always have a coach who just does not show emotion.
Never. Just always very like walking around on the sideline.
Bruce Arena, Greg Berhalter, Rob Bradley. It's just, just like we score a goal, just like, I'm like, oh, get pumped up. Like,
except for Berhalter being like 1-1. It's 1-1. That the one time he showed like emphasis, and then
I know. Get out of here. Get out of here with that. He's a terrible coach. He never should have been rehired.
I couldn't believe it. I could not believe
it. But, like, I like my coaches and my players to show emotion. I always compared Stephon Diggs. I agree in terms of, like, oh, he's a cancer in the locker room. He's always been a problem. Like, I don't think that's it. I think just the guy has such a high competitive nature to him. I always compared it to Jimmy Butler. I think he is the NFL version of Jimmy Butler, who's the guy who will, if people are dogging it during practice, Stephon's going to be like, hey, B team, come with me. Or, hey, practice squad, come with me. We're going to go show these guys up. Yeah. And he will. Like, just what Jimmy Butler did in Minnesota. Like, I always thought, like, that was the 1-to-1 comparison or 1-to-1 ratio of who Stephon Diggs was. It's just like a guy who competes at such a high level and expects that same level from everyone. Not that everyone isn't, but expects them to compete the same way or show the same oomph or something.
Care as much as him, to want it as much as him, to do.
And they just might show it a different way.
Yeah.
And he thinks everyone should be him pretty much.
And that's frustrating too. Like, cause it's also like, dude, I want to win just as much as you. Like, why do you think you want to win more than me? Or why do you think you work harder than me? Like, even if that is true, it's kind of like one of those, like you catch a fly with honey instead of like vinegar or whatever. Like, you're not going to get somebody to come to your side by being like, you don't work hard and you don't want it as much as me. Like, that's not going to get them to be like, you know what? You're right. Let me like step up more. And like some people might respond to that, but more often than not, especially in this world where you're playing in the NFL, everybody's making millions of dollars, and you're going to have somebody that's going to come like chew you out or act in a certain way that even if Diggs is right, even if Diggs is the hardest worker and he wants it more than anyone, you still have to go about it a right way to get people to kind of come to your side. And yeah, I think there was kind of that button of heads at times, and without it, we'll see kind of where they go or what they do.
We'll see where they go. We'll see who steps up in that wide receiver room. I want to move to the defense as we wrap up our first week of camp talk here. And of course, the big story for me is the health of Matt Milano. We heard in the weeks leading up to training camp that maybe he wasn't on schedule, or maybe a little behind in his recovery, a la Von Miller, or what Von Miller was versus what Von Miller said in terms of his recovery.
Yeah.
But he's practiced the last 2 days, and it's very clear to everyone how important of a piece Matt Milano is, especially in a 2 linebacker set that McDermott and Babbage will be running. We didn't get to see a lot of Bernard and Milano together. And Bernard was a Robert Royal fresh of breath air, as we like to say around here, in terms of where he was from year 1 to year 2, because I ate my words. I ate a lot of crow. I thought Terrell Bernard was like the worst pick, the worst player, but he turned into one of my favorite players last year. And we saw in the playoff game how much losing one or both of those guys affected the Bills and their ability to execute and ability to win games, because you run AJ Klein out there who never smiles. Google search AJ Klein, all the 95% of pictures is him never smiling. So he's a robot who needs his Wi-Fi reconnected. That's the theory. But AJ Klein is not going to guard Travis Kelce or cover or do anything in coverage. He's not a coverage linebacker. But how important is it to have Matt Milano back, have Matt Milano healthy, and have Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard on the field at the same time?
Super important. If all is well with him, you potentially have like an all-pro second level on this defense. Taron Johnson is already an all-pro. Matt Milano is already an all-pro. And I think that you can make a case that Bernard could potentially play himself into an all-pro conversation this year. And, you know, it's funny, last year may have kind of worked more for Terrell Bernard's trajectory than if Milano had stayed healthy, because it kind of threw Bernard into the fire a little bit more and kind of did baptism by fire. Like, hey, man, like the all-pro you were playing next to, he gone. And the guy who's going to replace him can't really cover, and you got to lead that second unit. And I think by mid-year, you just saw, I call Terrell Bernard kind of the air traffic controller, like just the communication, the hand signals, him guiding everyone. And then his play style, I think, really worked as well. And what McDermott and Babbage did to lean into that skill set was really nice. I hate the whole Tremaine Edmonds narrative and conversation, but the way Terrell Bernard played middle linebacker is different than the way Tremaine Edmonds played middle linebacker, because they're two different styles of linebacker. And McDermott and Babbage really tied into that. Like Bernard's ability to come forward and shoot and penetrate just against the run, but also as a blitzer, they lean into that very well. And he's also a good coverage dude who's tremendously smart, so that helps on the back end. But I think what we saw in those glimpses in those first 4 games when Milano was fully healthy and what they did, they're 5-man pressures, they're 6-man pressures, and then they're creepers and they're simulateds. And for those who don't know, so a simulated pressure is you show blitz before the snap, and then on the snap, you still only rush 4, but you drop a traditional rusher and you rush a non-traditional rusher. So the easiest way to think about it is, say you've got your 4 down linemen, and then you've got Milano and Bernard both right lined up next to the center in the A-gaps. On the snap, Greg Rousseau drops and Milano rushes. So you've got like Epinesa, Daquan, Ed Oliver, and Matt Milano. Like, so you drop
defensive edge dropping into coverage. Don't tell Rex Ryan.
Right? Oh my God, crazy. Yeah, or Mario Williams. So that's a simulated pressure. Creeper pressure is the exact same thing, except you don't show blitz pre-snap, and then on the snap, you bring a non-traditional rusher and you drop a traditional rusher. The Bills were very good on that. The A.J. Epinesa pick 6 against Washington was on I think it was a simulated pressure, That package was so helpful for the Bills, and it's extremely advantageous in today's NFL because it's a way to manipulate protections and dictate protection to an offense with simulated pressures, but still not having to sacrifice numbers and coverage. So yes, you have a defensive end or a defensive tackle in coverage, which isn't their strong suit, but that can be outweighed by manipulating protection, forcing them to keep a blocker in, or getting a one-on-one matchup that you want, or creating a free runner. So it's a major part of NFL defenses now, and defenses in general. And Milano just helps so much with that because of his ability as a blitzer, because of his ability as a coverage player. And to have him next to Bernard and then next to Taron, even though Taron's a slot, but I consider that second level kind of all the same, right. It just opens up what you're able to do against the run and then against the pass from a coverage and blitz standpoint. I think Milano's health is tremendously important. I am keeping an eye on it. He looked really good on day 1. Day 2, it looked like he was, laboring a little bit. There was a couple movement pieces where it really looked like he had to swing that leg through. Yeah. And I think some of that is natural. Like getting into camp shape is different than off-season work, let alone coming off that injury. So my fingers are crossed for everything to work out for him. Yeah, but he's a huge game changer on that defense. And when healthy, I think he's one of the best linebackers in football. He's in that conversation for being top 5 or top 3. And he just allows them to do so much in regular coverage, but then also as a rusher and a blitzer, and then against the run, he's a disruptor in every shape of the word.
He's so important to that defense. And when I started this episode and I said to the viewers, Anthony is the best at breaking down plays and describing how the play breaks down and using the terminology he's using. I had to pull up some tweets because, I mean, like I said, like reading some of these, Anthony, I mean, we could be, if these weren't in context of the Bills, these could be rated like PG-13, some of these descriptions of plays, because it's a little hot and bothered here. So I'm going to read a couple. I feel like they're like Saturday Night Live deep thoughts with Jack Handy, or nice. We can play some like cool, like flowy orchestral music here, and maybe our producer will put them in post here. But like for example, September 25th, 2023, last season, Ed Oliver spikes inside, occupying the Garden Center. Milano occupies the running back, and Terrell Bernard hits a well-timed and tight loop for a sack. Saucy, I like it. Or here on October 2nd, Matt Milano shoots the gap and takes on the fullback. Leonard Floyd boxes the run in, and Daquan Jones works down the line for the stop. And shout out to Terrell Bernard for fitting up the right guard and getting under him, shedding him. It's just like these tweets. I mean, these are the few weeks we saw Milano and Bernard together, and just the impact they can make together. It's night and day. It would be Matt Milano scraping over the top, flowing to the football and closing in on the hole. He scoops Arcane's leg and brings him down hard.
I know that tweet. That's against Miami. The camera angles from the end zone angle, and they run like a toss to the right, and he scrapes over the top and then picks the ankle with the right arm.
I mean, like I said, Anthony is the best at breaking the plays down and showing you what different players are doing and how they're impacting the play. And maybe it's the Jerry Hughes style of like, he doesn't get the sexy stats, and maybe this guy doesn't make the sack, but he is an integral part of the play. Maybe a defensive edge is setting the edge and causing this cause and effect situation of Milano doing something, because Anthony is amazing. And if you're not following him at _2_, right?
That's right.
_Ant.
You nailed it. You nailed the Twitter handle. You nailed my last name pronunciation. You're batting 1,000. Well done.
I know. This is an amateur hour here, folks.
But thank you for that. I appreciate that. I try to.
But no, go follow Anthony. He's amazing at breaking down the things. And like I said, get an ice pack, because you might get a little hot and bothered reading them.
Well done. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No, Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard. I'm very excited to see them together. I mean, we didn't get to see a lot last year, and I think you made a great point of Terrell Bernard kind of after post Milano's injury getting a trial by fire, kind of here's what you are, kid, like you're going to be the leader now, go out and do something. And he excelled beyond my wildest beliefs of what I thought he could be and what he could do. So I'm very excited to see them take that next step. Year 3 now, it's a lot. Year 3 is James Cook's year 3. It seems like year 3 is when those players make the leap from what you described as like good to great to very great to all pro. So to start climbing that ladder, year 3 seems to be kind of the pivot point there. So I'm very excited to see some of these players in year 3 as we move into the season here.
Same. Yeah, me too. I think year 1, you're trying to get acclimated to life as a pro and adjusting to the NFL game. And then year 2 is kind of building upon that. You kind of know the rhythm and routine and the ropes. And then I think that year 3 point is, your in-season routine, your off-season routine, what you have to work on in terms of diet or like workout routine and strength. And then how to prepare for games, what you want to study, what you work on, what you want to change and fix and tweak. I think by year 3, guys are more pro in terms of how they approach the game. And that's, again, why you see guys kind of plateau, some guys drop, or some guys really kind of shoot through that moon and, or shoot for the moon and shoot through the glass ceiling and kind of follow that upward trajectory.
Yeah, very excited to see how they progress during training camp, how this offense comes and gels with new pieces, even the defense with new safeties and new cornerbacks and things like that. Or
new coaches like Babbage is the DC, a new cornerback coach.
I love the energy. I love the energy him and Brady are bringing. Like they're on the field. They're actually like active and showing the guys like what they're doing. Like
that was part of it too. Like even with Dorsey, like he seemed kind of, I don't know, like more
stiff.
Yeah, like he didn't seem like kind of jokey, and maybe that's just
doesn't have a personality.
Yeah, and maybe
he was described as a psycho, so
correct.
I don't know.
So I don't know, man. But yeah, Babbage has been bringing a lot of energy, a lot of intensity, a lot of hands-on learning. Brady too, and I think that's another way to get buy-in. At the end of the day, we don't really think of it this way. Like football is still, if you're a coach, it is X's and O's, but you're still a people manager. Like being a defensive coordinator is no different than like being a manager in a warehouse and having a team. Like it's the same thing. You still have to people manage, and you need to build rapport and have chemistry and understand what makes somebody tick and what doesn't, and understand their strengths and their weaknesses and how to lean into the strengths and mitigate the weaknesses. You still have to be a people manager, and everybody's had that boss that they either hated or was weird and they didn't want to talk to. And you know what it's like when you're working for a boss that you want to work for because you feel a connection with them. I think maybe we're seeing a little bit more of that with Brady and Babbage. But I mean, I think players have always had a good relationship with McDermott, and they've talked about it a bunch for the most part. But yeah, there's a different energy level with Babbage and Brady. It's cool to see.
I think it's why so many were so upset when Chad Hall left. Because he had that kind of interactivity.
They love Chad Hall, man. Like he's a love dude everywhere he goes. Yeah, man.
Who doesn't? That's our camp talk. Let's we're gonna take a little quick break because we got to get the man, the myth, the legend, Marv Levy, and his vocal docile tones in here for real quick and give Anthony and I a breath here. And when we get back, we'll talk about some players you should be talking about or paying attention to a little more.
So go Bills, fight Bills, go. Come on, let's win for Buffalo.
Thank you, Marv. And we are back. Anthony, let's get into it. 3 players that Bills fans should be paying more attention to as we move into training camp, as we move into preseason here. Who do you think either has, it could be a well-known name like a Curtis Samuel, who maybe you didn't know what his role in the offense is, and you're like, wow, he's got a pretty prominent role in the offense now, so we should be paying more attention to him. Or it could be under the radar guy. Maybe it's a Cam Lewis-esque player or a Levi Wallace-esque player, an undrafted rookie who's stepping up and making plays. So hit us with who your first player is that Bills fans should be paying more attention to here in training camp.
I'm going to start with one I've been kind of banging the table for since he signed this offseason. It's going to be Dwan Smoot, edge that the Bills brought from Jacksonville. And I've talked about it a bunch this offseason. He tore his Achilles in week 16 in 2022. So last year was a recovery year for him. Didn't play until week 6. Didn't interview in November and said once he was in November, like he just started to feel like he was in the type of shape he'd feel when camp ended. So from like just a football shape standpoint, let alone a recovery from the injury standpoint, he was not himself last year. It usually takes a full year to kind of get through it. And then that year 2 is when you kind of get back to your previous self. And his previous self was a very productive one. In 2022, amongst 126 qualifying edges, he was tied for 36th in pass rush productivity, which is a formula that combines sacks, hits, and hurries relative to how many times you rush the passer. He was tied for 56th in total pressures, tied for 53rd in hurries, and tied for 31st in win percentage. He fits the physical compression style that the Bills like at edge, and he's also a really good spiker on two-man games, which is why he wasn't super high in total pressures, because they're using him to just crash off the edge and create an opportunity for someone else. But sometimes he'd be so good as a spiker that he would just generate a pressure or a hurry or something off of that. I think there's a very realistic shot that he is the edge 4 in this grouping. I think it's going to be some combination of Groot, Epinesa, and Von Miller. But I think Smoot is your edge 4. He can also reduce down and work at some defensive tackle on known pass rushing situations. And a lot of this is dependent upon him getting back to that pre-injury self. But based on what I saw in camp, he looked good. And he's a vet. Like he's been in some big games for Jacksonville. He's helped them accomplish. He's been a part of good defenses. He's helped them kind of turn things around a little bit for that franchise. And to have a dude, again, to be 36th in pass rush productivity out of 126, 56th in pressures, 53rd in hurries, and 31st in win percentage. To have that dude as your edge 4, like that's fantastic. Like, and he was a legitimate piece in those Jacksonville defenses when he was healthy. And yeah, that's been one that I was excited when they signed him. I don't think it's going to be from a stats or production level the same as Leonard Floyd, but I think Smoot's going to be the guy in October or November where everybody kind of looks back and was like, wow, that was a really huge move this offseason. Like that's a great Brandon Beane type signing. I think that's the conversation we'll be having midseason for Smoot if he stays healthy and looks good.
I really like that pick. In the years preceding the injury last year, he had consistently 5.5, 6 sacks. He's not a starter. He's not a full-time starter by any means. He's a rotational player. So you're right. As a defensive edge 4, I think that's a great piece to have that kind of consistency, a guy who can make a play every once in a while and step up. He also had a double-digit QB hits for 3 straight years, which again, for a rotational player is fairly high from what I can see.
And for a dude who, again, does a lot of the dirty work, like he isn't just pure, hey, on third downs, he gets put in a wide alignment and we let him hunt. No, like because Jacksonville loved to do a lot of two-man games with spikers and loopers and like sometimes a long looper. So sometimes his job was just, hey man, spike inside and occupy the guard and the tackle and free somebody else up. Like he does the dirty work in addition to being able to be productive with some stats, which makes the stats even more impressive.
Yeah. And I always get a little skeptical when it comes to the kind of these tweener defensive tackle, defensive edges. Yes, he plays defensive edge, but as you mentioned, he can bump inside on certain packages and play defensive tackle. It never has seemed to work out the way the Bills expect it to with these guys. I go back to somebody like a Quentin Jefferson, who has played much better on other teams, the Seahawks and other teams he's been on. It just didn't seem to fit with the Bills for whatever reason. He was kind of a tweener defensive edge, defensive tackle. We don't know really what he is. So I don't know if the history's there, and that's why I'm a little skeptical of kind of what his position is. But I really like him from a depth perspective. I really like him in terms of his consistency prior to coming to the Bills. So I really think, again, as you said, as the 4th defensive edge, possibly the 5th, maybe a Casey Toohill or our guy Jonathan Kingsley, because we gotta stand for him because he's a guest of the show. So I mean, we always ride with Jonathan Kingsley. I know it's not his name. I know it's Kingsley Jonathan. I was seeing if I catch you.
I wasn't going to correct you on that one. Like that's like,
no,
I'm going to,
I want to see if the viewers are paying attention. No, Kingsley's our dude. And I'm always worried because he was put on the practice squad his rookie year and the Bears plucked him. And I'm like, man, I really like that guy. He was a guest on the show.
He showed some cool moments.
And then he came back and he had some moments. And I'm like, yeah, Kingsley can do stuff. Like, so I think, for lack of a better term, the bench is deep at defensive edge. And it's all going to, of course, be predicated on, can Von return to some kind of form?
Can Von return to some type of form? And then, like, if he does or doesn't return to that form, does AJ Epinesa take a leap? And then does Groot take a leap as a pass rusher? So I think they have really good depth in terms of having a bunch of dudes that are like a B- to a high kind of B. I worry about the top tier production. Like how many A dudes do they have? How many B pluses do they have? And in how many areas? Like, so yeah, it's a deep group from a functional depth standpoint. I wonder what it looks like from a top tier or top end standpoint.
Yeah. Dwayne Smoot. Is it Dwayne? Is it?
I've heard it in both, and I've listened to interviews.
I've heard
it's
a Tyrod to Rod kind of thing.
Yeah, and I go with just I've heard it in enough interviews of being Dewan that I'm like, all right, cool. But I've heard it both, and he's never corrected somebody on an interview, and I've seen it with like official team accounts where it's Dewan. So I'm like, all right, cool. I'll just roll with it. I might just say Smoot from now on because it seems to still be just, and no one else has that name, so it's just like you can just say Smoot and people know who it is.
Right. People know Fred Smoot from his infamous boat yachting.
True. But he's out of the league. So unless the people's like, wait, Fred Smoot is still around? I'm like, no, it's Dewan or Dwayne. Yeah.
Dewan or Dwayne or whoever. Yeah.
D Smoot.
That's a great first pick. D Smoot. I like that. That's like a hype man for like Public Enemy.
D Smoot. And he comes out and he's just like Smoot.
Yeah.
Smoot. Yeah, that's a good one.
I like that. If we can get 80,000 at the Ralph, Smoot.
So that actually has a pretty sweet chant. Yeah. That's a good like. If he was a wrestler and his music hits and everybody's just in the crowd going Smoot, 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 that's a pretty sweet, like, yeah. He would have to have like a spear or a pounce as his finisher, and he starts to stomp in the corner and everybody's just like getting ready for it. Yeah, that's a banger.
I always like a person whose name you can use in different grammatical ways of like adjective or verb. Like you got smooted.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Dude just got smooted.
Yeah. Gets a sack. Dude got smooted. We're trademarking that.
I like that.
No, good first pick. Second pick. Who do you have under the radar guys?
It's funny because I've done like a couple of these episodes throughout the off season, and I'm gonna go with one off of camp. I thought he was this next guy was a lock to make the roster, but he's just looked better in camp than even I thought as a pass catcher. I'm gonna go with Mac Hollins.
Okay.
I think he already had value in this offense. Because even if the offense was the same as last year, he could be in that Gabe Davis wide receiver who can block good type of role.
Right.
But that role, even if it was just that role would have even more value this year if they move in that direction that I talked about of more condensed formation, reduced formational width. Having a guy like Mac Hollins, for me, he's kind of like, and I talked about one of these guys earlier, he's kind of like a poor man's Josh Reynolds from the Lions last year. I don't think he's bigger than Reynolds, and I think he actually he's a better blocker. I put out a clip today of Hollins in 2021 for the Raiders blocking a defensive end one-on-one in pass protection on the front side of a play action. Like it's just
that was a different clip.
No, it's just ridiculous. Like him blocking that edge one-on-one, and he does a good job with it. But he's not.
I hold my breath because there's a clip. I don't know if you ever saw. I have to mention it. Sorry to interrupt. Where he is he's the gunner on special teams and he gets beat by a bird or a pigeon or something.
Yeah, no, not that one. Well done, though.
I thought you were going to mention that.
Yeah, I saw this clip. Yeah, no, it doesn't have relevance here, but I know the clip.
You can't outrun a bird. Come on, guy.
Right? Come on, guy. Down there. Just his ability as a blocker helps, but he's shown better as a pass catcher. He's got good hands. It showed on his tape, especially in Atlanta last year. But how they're using him this year to kind of blur the lines pre-snap between run and pass and put him in motion to have him get some extra momentum as a blocker, and then doing the same thing and showing the same look, but having him leak out into the flat for a pass. And he's got some deception capabilities in his routes. Again, I tweeted out a couple of them today, but just seeing how productive he's been so far in camp. He's creating separation underneath. His feet have looked good for like a longer but a longer leg type of big frame kind of guy. It's not easy to have dip and bend and quick feet. Sometimes your stride is a little more elongated. It takes you longer to get in and out of breaks. But he's looked good the first 2 days in camp. And this part of is coming from me of people like commenting or tweeting at me when I've been at camp and being like, is Mac Hollins a thing? Is Mac Hollins going to be a thing? And I already thought he was going to make the team just because of his special teams value, but I didn't know where he'd fit in the wide receiver hierarchy. Like, is he getting a ton of snaps, but they're all blocking snaps and he's really just a special teamer? Like, what does that look like? I think he's going to get snaps in this offense, especially until Keon Coleman's ready. I think he's going to get some X receiver snaps and they'll work in Keon Coleman. But Hollins has value, and I know people don't want to hear it, but as a blocker when you have wide receivers who can block, they just open up a lot for your offense and make things easier because of, again, the bind the defense has to be in terms of, is this going to be a run or is this going to be a pass? And you don't have to be, you can be a mediocre or even a little below average wide receiver.
Right.
And if you're a tremendous blocking wide receiver who's a below average or mediocre as a pass catcher, that can set you up for better things post snap. You can make it look like you're about to crack on this apex or this box safety, and then all of a sudden pop it back out and you're open because they're seeing you and being like, oh, Mac Hollins is just going to block. Here comes the run. It's play action. Let me start to attack. And all of a sudden, or here comes the run, but it's play action. And Mac faked you and he pops it back out and he's wide open for a 30-yard play or something like that. I think he just helps things schematically. Again, with the condensed formation, reduced formation width, being a pass catcher who can block, but he's looked better as an actual like wide receiver pass catcher these first couple of days in camp than I thought he would. So, and just so much of this receiver conversation has been, I wonder what Keon does, and Shakir is awesome, and Curtis Samuel, and then, oh, they signed MVS. I feel like Hollins is not really talked about. I feel like people talk about Chase Claypool more than they talk about Mac Hollins. So, given what I expect him to be, I don't think he's going to be a stud or an all-pro, but I think he's going to have a role that is useful schematically and from a mismatch standpoint. And then from a snap share standpoint, I think he'll be there and it just ties in with under the radar.
Yeah, I'm right with you. I was kind of reading the reports after the first couple of days of camp here. I was very surprised because I thought Mac Hollins would just be, Jake Kumaro. I thought he'd just be Jake Kumaro, the seventh receiver, insurance policy, solid special teams player, but it seems like he is more involved in this offense. And I mean, you opened up the floodgates, and ever since Mac Hollins signed to this Bills team, I have said, and Tony has said, like, Mac Hollins is the most interesting player on this team because he is a character. And we said, what does this Bills team need going from last year to this year? We need to up the goofiness factor.
Man,
we need to up the silliness. We need to up the kind of, looseness of it. And Mac Hollins, frilling his shirts with the scissors. And
dude, he came out yesterday. He came out on Wednesday, and I felt like I was at like a wrestling show. Yeah, the barefoot, the cut up shirt, the hair flowing. Yeah, bro, he looked like he was about to wrestle in like NXT. It was awesome.
He owns snakes. His pregame routine is having peanut M&Ms in water and then drinking that before the games. If Josh Allen wasn't throwing up before games then, he is now after watching Mac Hollins drink that. He's just a guy. He's an interesting dude, and he just brings kind of this levity, this looseness. I don't know any way to describe it, but it's just funny.
He has an energy and a vibe to him, and the first couple of days in camp, like working with the ones, he's getting targets from Josh Allen. And then even when he's working with the twos, he's getting targets from Mitch Trubisky. Like, dude, just keep going to him. And this is a little like, this is one just kind of like a personal affinity for me. A lot of times in drills, he's the first one up. He makes it a point to be the first one in drill, whether it's individual wide receiver drills or if it's stuff they're doing with the QBs, he's the first one. The first rep is him consistently across the board. And I don't know if like that's predetermined or he's like, it just happens to work out that way. But I think that's another little like interesting nugget. It seems like he's just, hey, let me set the tone. Let me set the tempo. Like I'll be the example. Like I'll be this. And I think that goes like a long way as well. He seems to have the buy-in from like his peers and the team at this point. Again, early on in camp, but I think if you go and watch the tape, there's some pieces to like. Yeah, I think he's definitely. I think people are getting onto him more now because of how much his name has been talked about these first several days. But yeah, I think he's going to be more of a thing this year than people thought.
Yeah, I agree. And setting the tone, that's the key, because if people follow our Twitter at wittysports716, everyone knows we're fans of the show Shoresy. It's a Canadian show on Hulu. It's about hockey. Yeah. It is so funny. But a big theme is like setting the tone, and that's how the game is going to be dictated. So we need tone setters. And if Mac Hollins is that tone setter during practice, I love that. Like we need guys who can set the tone.
I love Shoresy. I love Letterkenny. That's right. So yeah, funny. Well done. So good.
Shoresy's such a funny show. It's awesome. The kid reporter, Jory Jordison, is I have him on my Mount Rushmore of like sitcom characters.
He's such a prick. Yeah, so good.
Funniest character. He's such a prick, but he does it in such a way that like just baffles and leaves people speechless.
It's so good.
awesome. Like watch Shorzy. It's so funny, but it's about setting the tone, and that's how they win games is by setting the tone. They have this line, this enforcer line that sets the tone. So Mac Hollins is our enforcer on the wide receiver core, setting the tone.
I like it.
Let's go with that. But Mac Hollins is awesome. I love his character. I love his vibe. We're a big vibe show, as listeners and viewers know. So Mac Hollins vibes are through the roof. So Mac Hollins definitely trending up here the first couple of days of camp. Third and final player, Anthony, who you got?
So this one is just based for me on what I think they are versus how much they're talked about. And it's going to be Christian Benford.
Oh,
I don't think people realize how good of a corner Christian Benford already is and what he can do. I think he's already like a very solid CB2. Nice. I think he's already a solid CB2. I think by end of the year, he could be a high-end CB2 or even like a legitimate CB1, like a low-end like CB1. He's still improving. Like his trajectory is still going up. I know he had some injuries his first couple of seasons, but he performed so well in this defense. He's responsible in zone. He's physical. He's big. He's able to function in press, either like legitimate press and jam or press bail. He's a very good tackler, and that's going to matter so much in today's NFL as teams are kind of going back to the run game, and so much of the outside run game, even some of the inside stuff like duo, the idea is like offenses are trying to, they know they can't just get a hat on a hat. So the idea is like, all right, cool. Let's get a hat on these dudes and we'll put our running back one-on-one with the corner and see what happens. The one that I'll always remember, and such a good example of it, and because they diagnose it and talk about it so well in the broadcast, when the Colts beat the hell out of the Bills in the regular season, like 2 years ago, the year after the Bills beat them in the playoffs.
I remember that game,
Yeah, it was brutal. One of the touchdowns, Jonathan Taylor, I think it's on duo, gets the ball in the at the 6 or 7 yard line. He bounces it outside. He's one-on-one with Trey White, and Trey has no shot, and Taylor houses it.
Right.
And that play is designed to put the corner one-on-one with the running back. Like that's what the offense is trying to do. We're going to block the safety. We're going to block the backer. We're going to block the edge. We're just playing the odds. And the odds are exactly your corner can't tackle our dude. That's what we're going to think. Right. Benford changes that math because he can come up and work as a force player and turn that thing back inside, or he can come up and make the actual tackle. I think he's very well built for today's NFL, just with his size, his frame, physicality, what he's able to do in coverage, and then what he's able to do against the run. And he fits tremendously in this defense, but I think he matters a lot in today's NFL. And a good one to always think about if you need to. You can search it on my timeline. You can literally type Pro Ant Benford. The interception against the Miami Dolphins in Week 18. Granted, Tua underthrows it a little bit, but they're playing cover 3, and he's splitting the outside man and Tyreek Hill, who comes in that cheetah motion on the inside. He's splitting them both. He reads Tua make that throw, and he takes off and gets right onto Tyreek Hill's hip, goes up and plucks it out of the air and gets the interception. Yeah. He makes a lot of plays on the ball, and even the interceptions aren't there, but I'm talking plays on the ball from like strips and forced fumbles. I'm talking about the peanut punch against New England towards the end of the year, where not only he punches it, he punches through so clean, he rips it out. So he forces the fumble and takes the ball at the exact same time. I just think we know he's a starter, and so he's not under the radar in terms of not being known, but I just think he's so far down on the conversation list for people. Like this defense, is Milano healthy? What's Vaughn going to be? What's Groot going to do? What's AJ Epinesa going to do? Is Ed Oliver really elite? Hey, Daquan Jones is back. Man, Terrell Bernard is sweet. What's happening at safety? Man, I love Rasul Douglas. Taron Johnson's an all-pro. I feel like Bernard out of the starters is 11th out of 11 in terms of conversation topics and pieces. And he's so much better than how much he gets talked about.
Yeah. On this show, we say, when we say Christian Benford's name, we say as in the Benford 6100 from Tool Time.
Oh, nice.
Which was a running gag. So
nice.
The old Tim the Tool Man Taylor grunting. Because Christian Benford has more power, of course.
I like it.
So no, I've loved Christian Benford. I loved his game coming out of the football powerhouse that is Villanova.
His tape was the first piece of tape I saw,
I didn't
have a lot on him coming out from Nova. The only game I had,
I don't think anyone did, but when you watched
it was brutal. I only had them against Penn State, and the first play of the game, he's covering Jahan Dotson, who's sick for Washington now and was a first round pick. Dotson turns him inside out and just abuses him. And I was like, oh, this isn't going to be good. And then Benford gets to camp. Granted, one game is a horrible sample size, but Benford gets to camp, wins a starting spot, and has never looked back. And this isn't a starting corner where it's like, he's Levi Wallace and he's responsible and it's fine. No, he has really high CB2, low CB1, even maybe mid CB1 upside if he continues on this trajectory. And even within that, that draft, more people talk about Kyer Elam not being the guy than they do talking about how Christian Benford was a 6th-round pick who's turned into a legitimate corner in the NFL. Even within that draft and his own position group, he gets talked about less. I think more people now in camp are like, hey, what's Kyer look like? What's Kyer look like? What is Kyer? He's not even, he's like 3rd in talking points in the cornerback grouping at best. It's just wild.
Yeah, I've loved him ever since he came out of Villanova. Of course, he wasn't on anyone's radar when we drafted him because it's a football player out of Villanova. But with a guy with his size, over 6 feet, over 200 pounds, and to have his athleticism, you mentioned a couple plays there. I recall a play against Miami too, where it was a deep was caught, and Christian Benford actually chased him down and caught him. And it's like, that was Christian Benford doing you wouldn't expect him to have that kind of speed. And to top that off with the coverage ability, I think he's such a good fit for McDermott's zone defensive scheme with his length and his instincts, as you mentioned. So I'm really looking forward to him potentially taking a next step in terms of, you mentioned like a CB1 level. And it always reminded me of what the Washington football team did when they drafted Robert Griffin III and then went with Kirk Cousins. It's like, okay, we're going to draft this high level position, but in case it doesn't work out, we're going to go later in the draft and go right back to that position. And if anything, he's great depth. If anything, it's an insurance policy that can be more. And in this case, it was more because he's obviously outplayed Kyer Elam. Now, I don't really know. What do you think Kyer Elam's role is moving forward? Obviously, still on his rookie deal, but that's getting finished quickly. And right now he's penciled in as a CB3 and a depth player. Rasul Douglas obviously has a year left on his contract. So is it Kyer will see how you do, and then the 4th year take over for Rasul if we think you're what do you think his role is?
I think you nailed it. I think the hope is still, I think this is a very make or break year for Kyer with, new coaching staff. You're going into year 3 with prospect stuff in general. I'm never making a concrete judgment on a player until they finish year 3, good or bad. They could be crushing it the first couple of seasons, and I'll still be like, let's wait out for year 3, and vice versa. They might be nothing first couple of years. The year 3, you always want to give them those 3 years. And we've talked about it earlier, how important year 3 is. I'm still holding out hope for him. The traits are there, the tools are there. We had him as a guest in the film room with us last year. He's so smart. And I'm not just saying that just to say it.
That book was thick.
Dude, the book was thick. He's talked what were we showing? Is his interception against the Dolphins in the playoffs when Tua was hurt. And he's talking about here's the coverage. The route distribution was this. I'm reading the quarterback and there's 2 receivers over here and I see him go to throw. But I can tell by the angle of his shoulder that he's not going to the shorter man. He's going to the deeper one. So I bailed off the underneath and I went deep. And he's very smart. And it makes sense. His uncle and his dad played in the NFL. He's grown up around professional football players and that mindset. And it wouldn't surprise me if he kind of put it all together. I do think the hope is, especially because they restructured, they could have extended Rasul Douglas this offseason. They instead just chose to restructure him and move the money around. So to your point, Rasul Douglas is not on this roster next year. His void years are, so he's going to hit monetarily, but right now on the roster, he's not on it. So in an ideal world, I think they hope Kyer things start to click this year, and then Benford's your 1 next year, and then Kyer Elam is your 2, and that could potentially work out. I'm holding out hope. I'm still skeptical. I know a lot of people kind of bang the drum for, but now they have a cornerback coach who is better in coaching man coverage and the defense might play more man. That's not the problem. The problem is even when he was in man, it's not like he was good in man and bad in zone. Granted, he was more experienced in man. The problem is his feet were bad and he would panic and get grabby, and he was clutchy and grabby from day one. In back-to-back camps, they put boxing gloves on him to make him stop grabbing people because he was just grabbing jersey left and right. So if they can clean up some stuff with his feet and kind of reset his game a little bit, I think that could help a lot. And even just with the man in zone, the Bills play a lot of match coverage stuff, which basically means your zone coverage is going to turn into man anyway. So man coverage is going to be prevalent no matter what. If they can get him to clean up his feet a little bit and kind of reset his game and instill that confidence in him, if his feet are right, his hands should get right after that. They just got to get him to stop panicking at the top of routes and stuff. I do think their hope is he shows enough this year that makes them feel comfortable. I still think they would address corner next offseason, either in the draft or free agency. But I think the hope is that he can be a solid CB3 this year with the hope of taking over a starting spot next year.
And then next year he's on essentially a contract year. And
correct.
Most players
and then
perform their best when they're on.
Are you picking up his
during their
option? Are
contract
you not? Like, what are you doing? Yeah, that next year becomes a hugely important one.
Yeah. One player, as we wrap up here, one player that I like, speaking of the cornerback room, because it is, from a depth perspective, quite thin, because past Kyer Elam being your third option, you kind of fourth option is Jamarcus Ingram, who's been on the practice squad. We always stand for UB alumni and grads here. So we love Jamarcus Ingram. I actually do like his game. I think it's good. But a guy that I've noticed a lot in OTAs and now in training camp has popped up quite often. And I'm not going to do this correctly because it's all over the place on the internet, is Kenny H Lovely, according to him, sometimes the dash is there and sometimes it's not. So I don't know if it's Kenny H or if it's Kenneth or something. But that's a guy who seems to be that undrafted free agent, a la Levi Wallace, a la Campbell, who's making plays during training camp. And because of the lack of depth in that cornerback room, has a real chance, I think, of making this roster.
He was on my list of day 2 standouts. And I know that the name thing because I went and Googled, like, am I typing this right?
Right.
And there was a whole bunch of, like, some have the hyphen, some don't, some the H is capitalized, some it isn't. I was like, what the hell is going on?
My advice is just do what Prince did and just be a symbol. Just be the dash.
Nice. Just be the dash. That's it.
Just be the dash.
That's it. I like that. But he in drill and in team, he was making plays on the ball. He's getting PBUs. He's getting his hands on the ball. He's jumping routes. He's bringing energy and confidence. He's a guy that I'm going to keep an eye on more coverage structure stuff on Sunday when I go back. But I was impressed with his game. Like, I just kept seeing 38. I was very offensive focused the first couple of days.
Yeah.
And I just kept seeing 38, kept like making plays and making plays and making plays. And I was like, damn, like Lovely just keep like it. I just feel like every time there was an incompletion, it was a ball getting batted down. And then I looked like back to see who did it. And it was 38 every single time. So I like that one from you, I think. And especially too, in the preseason, Bernard's not going to play a ton. Rasul Douglas isn't going to play a ton. So all those backup corners are going to get some burn. And he's a type of dude, like you could see him playing multiple quarters and maybe he shows out and balls out and all of a sudden, he's your CB4 or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of guys aren't coming out of Western Michigan and making a statement. So I think he has a real shot. Like I said, he's making plays, as you mentioned, and it just seems like he's a guy that keeps popping up here. It's like years and years ago when Duke Williams was on the team. It's like unheard of guy, but it just seemed like every camp report I read, like Duke Williams is making a play. Duke Williams is doing something. And lo and behold, he makes a practice squad and eventually has a role for a couple games. Like, scores a game-winning touchdown against Tennessee, is the most targeted receiver in the Houston playoff game. Like, he found a role, but it's a guy who just seemed to be popping up during camp. And I compare that to Kenny H Lovely, and he just seems to be popping up and making plays. I really like him, and I really think he has a shot, like to kind of burst the bubble and get on the 53 here.
And though that happens every year with every team. Somebody catches fire in camp or catches fire in the preseason, and all of a sudden shoots up the depth chart and wins a roster spot. And he's also the type of dude, like with his energy, probably going to be a good special teamer. Like, seems like the type of dude who will just do whatever to make the team. Like, and yeah, that's a really good call from you. I like it. It's just so funny, like you talking about his name. Like, I literally went through this yesterday on the internet. I was like,
confused, right?
Am I typing this? Like, what is going on? Like, so many sites, literally every other one was like different than the one above it. And I was just like, this is a nightmare.
Well, it just seems like the Bills have this history of like, for some reason, I personally fall in love with a cornerback who is under the radar during training camp, during preseason, a la like a Nick McLeod or somebody.
Oh,
And they
nice.
never give him like, I'm like, this guy's making plays during camp. He's making plays in preseason. He's really good. Like, and they never give him a shot to crack the roster. And maybe it's because the roster was much better now in this Allen era than it was back then when maybe that guy had a chance to crack the roster. But still, it's like, these guys like an Isaiah Hodgins on the offensive side, like these guys, you just got to give them a shot to see what they are. And I just don't want Kenny H Lovely to fall into that Nick McLeod of like what could be. I'm always scared of the what could be. So,
That's fair. That's fair. I like it. I like it.
Moving on, our last segment, real quick, because we have to do it because it's an ongoing segment.
I like this one. I did research for it.
Quickly.
I sat and thought about it for my answer, so I put effort into it.
Our draft season, of course, the Olympics are going on. Opening ceremonies kicked off today. I like the Olympics. It's once every 4 years. It's a spectacle. I enjoy it. You get to watch a lot of sports that you don't typically see. And I wish actually the Olympics would show more of the obscure sports like archery and things like that, because I think those some of the coolest in terms of athletic ability and things like that. So I don't need to see like 7 straight nights of swimming. Yeah, guys can swim, girls can swim. I get it. Like, I don't need to see it every
I see
day.
archery.
Yeah, show me something else. Even synchronized swimming. I'll rather watch that than 7 straight nights of swimming. But no, so I thought for a good draft season this week, and as we wrap up the episode here, Bills in the Olympics. Like, what Bill and what sport would they perform the best in, achieve a gold medal in? So, Anthony, as our esteemed guest, we'll let you kick it off, and we'll do no snake style. We go back and forth with our 3. So, your first number 1 pick here.
Nothing is going to be better than the one that you put in the segment notes. Like, nothing is going to beat that. Like, it's
You
so
can steal
perfect.
it if you want.
No, I'm not stealing it. It's absolutely artwork. That's beautiful. My first one, I give this comp all the time with his running style, and it just fits for the Olympics. James Cook, alpine skiing. I mentioned it at times, the way he like cuts and moves in between the hole with defenders. I say it's very like a slalom style skier. And so him and the alpine skiing, I can picture him just on the mountain, just weaving through, going through and pulling and everything. So yeah, my first one is James Cook, alpine skiing. I just think it fits his running style. And I thought it fit a little bit into the obscure aspect of it. So that's what I'm going with.
Love it. Great first pick. I mean, I think the way he runs is, I don't know what I expected of James Cook coming out of Georgia. He was kind of like that third down back, third in line. I mean, he always seemed to have other people in front of him who seemed to be more prolific in the Georgia offense, but there was always something there. And now he gets a chance to be the guy. And, between all the all-purpose yards that he accumulated last season to, not, like I said before, going into the third year when players really seem to make that leap into stardom, if you will, I am super excited. If like this offense centers around Josh Allen and Josh Allen didn't exist, like I would say the next in line for this offense to center around is James Cook.
I'm right there with you.
That good.
Like, I think Kincaid is the tip of the spear when it comes to the passing game. I really think James Cook is the number 2 person in this offense, mainly think about it, from a touch standpoint. He's going to get the ball in the run game. And then with Brady's proficiency in getting the ball to his running back, something he did at LSU, something he did in Carolina, Cook's going to get the ball. He's going to get targets, and he's going to get touches in the run game. He is going to be the second most important, I think, quote unquote, weapon in this offense. So much of the conversation is, oh, what's Coleman going to be? Like, what's, MVS or what's Shakir? Like, there's a realistic shot that James Cook is the second or third highest targeted dude after Dalton Kincaid this year. Actually, and even if I go back to 2023, regular season and postseason combined, James Cook was 4th on the Buffalo Bills in targets last year. Stephon Diggs was 1st with 175. Kincaid was 2nd with 101. Gabe Davis was 3rd with 78. James Cook was 4th with 62 targets. I think he's a hugely important piece of the offense. That's so well said. Well, good point.
Yeah, that's a good first pick. My first pick, this seems like the most obvious pick. Sean McDermott, wrestling.
Good.
I think Sean McDermott will gold medal in wrestling. Anytime I see a player's draft profile and it says former wrestler, I believe Sean McDermott is writing his name on the draft big board in bold letters. Give me this guy who wrestles. Sean McDermott loves former wrestlers, and not WWE style wrestlers, but
like
actual
Greco-Roman,
wrestlers.
yeah.
Greco-Roman wrestlers, yes. So Sean McDermott, I think in his younger days, maybe not now, or maybe if there's like a senior Olympics, I don't know if they have that. I'm sure they do somewhere. I think he could gold medal in wrestling.
I'm right there with you.
The wrestling athlete has like, I don't know, like just that grittiness. I think Sean McDermott looks for, and look at Gable Stevenson or Stevenson. I think is how you actually pronounce it. It's not Stevenson. Yeah, like former wrestler, like on the Bills. Like,
makes sense.
Like that's like peanut butter and jelly. I could have called that one as soon as he said he was interested in being an NFL player. The Bills are on his radar, or he's on the Bills' radar for sure.
Oh, this guy's a wrestler, or he likes wrestling. Like, Sean McDermott. Especially, I think that goes back to the whole Bills not taking Creed Humphrey. Like, they had a need on the offensive line, and Creed Humphrey was a wrestler. Like, everybody and their mother was like, the Bills are going to take Creed Humphrey. Yeah, the Bills are going to take Creed Humphrey. And then they took Boogie Basham. Everybody was like, what? And then Creed Humphrey went to the Chiefs and became an all-pro. Yeah, McDermott, wrestling, slam dunk, easy choice.
Yeah, easy choice. Your number 2 pick.
Keon Coleman, beach volleyball. I think the idea of his length, his verticality, the jumping ability, and then not just like the length and overall size and frame, but that arm, I just picture him going up and just tomahawking that ball into the sand left and right. I think like his skin, his body type, his skill set, I think it just fits with the ground he can cover, how high he can jump, the good hands that he has. I'm looking at him and just seeing that athleticism and that profile, and I'm putting him on my beach volleyball squad. And I think he gold medals easy.
I love that pick because I think Keon Coleman, beach volleyball, not only the athleticism and the sports aspect of it all, but just in terms of Keon Coleman's personality and his character, can you imagine him like spiking the game-winning point in the celebrations of like building a sandcastle or sand angels or something? Like there's so many options for Keon Coleman's personality to shine on a beach volleyball court. It's not even funny. Like,
I like that. That's very good.
It'd be amazing. It'd be amazing. I love that pick. And viewers, if you who do you think, like, let us know in the comments who you think a Bills player and what Olympic sport they could. Please feel free to comment and your thoughts on this as well. No, Keon Coleman, great pick. I mentioned Mac Hollins with the goofiness factor. Like, Keon Coleman definitely falls into that.
Yeah.
I love not only his character, and which has gone viral this offseason, of course, for many different reasons. The guy's a walking viral clip, but I love the fact, and from the reports I read, he is solely working with Josh Allen to build that chemistry. Like, he's not running out there with Mitch Trubisky or Shane Buechel, whatever his last name is.
Yeah, whatever.
Some Springer guy. Don't care. But he's solely working with Josh Allen to build that chemistry as quickly as possible. I love to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you want to see that. Again, like we talked about the people management aspect, and that's for coaches and that, but from a player standpoint, they're your coworkers. Like, you want to build that rapport and that chemistry with your coworker, but especially one who like directly impacts your play and vice versa. It's very good to see that kind of effort and purposeful focus within that 100%.
Absolutely. My number 2 pick, I'm going to cheat a little here, Anthony. I apologize. I'm going to group these guys all together because I'm putting Marcel Darius, Marshawn Lynch, Al Collins, and Paul Hubbard, the third former receiver for the Bills, on my bobsled team.
Nice.
Because they're all, the common thread here is reckless driving, and that's all bobsled is. It's reckless driving at insane speeds down an ice tunnel. It'd be like our little uncool runnings, if you will.
That's very good.
I don't know. Bobsled team.
I don't know if Darius could fit in the sled, but I like it. And you know what I really like? I love if Marshawn Lynch is mic'd up going down on the bobsled. I want to hear him just in the turns and in the dips and everything. Like, he would be a star.
It would be amazing.
That's very good.
It would be amazing. Marshawn Lynch is slowly, and maybe not even slowly, but you know how they like bring Snoop Dogg on for like commentary on sports now? That's going to be Marshawn Lynch. If it isn't now, like once Snoop Dogg passes the torch, he's passing it to Marshawn Lynch. So Marshawn Lynch is going to be commenting on like synchronized swimming and all this stuff.
It's so funny too because he's
It's
like
going to be amazing.
He's just so funny and comical. But if you hear him ever talk about football, like he's smart, like
Super
he
smart.
knows the game, like and even within everything that he's doing and how he's like marketed himself, it's not an accident. Like he doesn't have some PR guy pulling the strings. Like he knows what he's doing and how to play it up, and it's hilarious. Like he's become such like an endearing kind of character since he left football. Even during it, like the whole Skittles aspect. Like I love Marshawn Lynch. I'm down for that. That's a good squad.
Amazing personality. If you haven't watched the Netflix show Murderville, he's on it on an episode, and he's fantastic on it. It's great. So check that out if you haven't. That's a recommendation. Anthony, your third and final pick. Bills in the Olympics. Who you got?
I like this one a lot just because I think of what could result from it. So it's Bruce Smith and it's boxing. And I just think of what Bruce Smith would look like as a heavyweight boxer. I don't want anybody to get hurt, but just the dudes. Violence and how he's mauling dudes, facing
little
some
giants,
dude.
Intimidation.
Yes, exactly right. Just boom, like I don't know, like some guy tries to punch him in the face and he catches it with his mouth and like bites his glove off and is just hammering. I mean, his listed weight is 6'4", 262 pounds. He's probably gonna have to cut down to like 250s or high 240s, but he's just gonna be all chiseled. Like he's gonna be huge and cut and violent, and that's like that. I don't even know if you'd have to train. You obviously would, but like you don't even have to train him for boxing. Like just take prime Bruce Smith and give him some boxing gloves and be like, just go beat up the other dude. We know how important endurance training was to him, and he'd be on the Stairmaster for like 75 hours every day. Just here's some gloves and some shorts. Just go beat the crap out of the other dude across from me. Like I just think of like, and Mike Tyson is one of the most dominant fighters ever, but I think of what Tyson was, and like that's what I think like Bruce Smith could have been as a boxer, like in the Olympics. Just and then like the reach and the length, but the violence and the strength and the quickness and the explosion and the power. Yeah, like I would feel horrible for whoever he goes against. Like if I'm stepping in the ring and it's Bruce Smith, I'm like, nah, dude, you can keep the medal. I'm out.
That's a great one. That's a perfect pick. No, Bruce Smith would like intimidation personified in the boxing ring. Just give him a face tattoo and he might be better than Mike Tyson, I would say. But no, Bruce Smith, like all-time sack leader, just like I said, violence personified. I would not want to be in the other corner of a boxing ring going against Bruce Smith. That is for sure. That's a great third pick. For those who, before Anthony mentioned our example I left in the show comments, it's Ed Oliver, an equestrian, because he's a great horse rider. So that's not going to be one of our picks. That'll be like an honorable mention. So for my third and final pick, this seems like another kind of late round gem, a Christian Benford like pick, if you will. Tre'Davious White, hockey.
No, that's so. I can't believe I didn't do that one. So good.
Because he's a great goaltender. We all know that.
I can't believe I didn't do that one. No notes. Well done. No, oh, damn it. I'm so mad at myself.
There's nothing else to be said. It's just he's Trey White Goalie Academy is the top goalie academy in all of hockey. We all know that.
Oh,
he would be a gold medalist in hockey. Very
absolutely. I would love to watch him like play goalie in the Olympics and also be mic'd up and just to hear him doing what he. Oh man, yeah, that's such a good pick. I don't even want to comment. Good.
Do you ever see like NHL when they have to use the emergency goalie who's like an accountant?
Yes.
Who just
work here. Just
imagine Trey White in that role.
Yeah.
Yeah. like he's an accountant for ticket sales or whatever, and plays in the worst beer league, men's hockey league. Like you're the emergency goal. Trey White in that role would be amazing. And then like you said with Marshawn Lynch, just having him mic'd up.
So
because
good.
you see you see viral things on social media all the time of like basketball players or NFL players going to hockey games for the first time and kind of them just being mic'd up, and the comments are hysterical. Like because they don't really know what hockey is. They never watched a hockey game. They don't know, especially being on the glass, like the speed of the game, the physicality and the violence and the skill involved, like all these aspects. And it's very funny. Google search like anybody athlete commenting or sitting, on the boards for a hockey game commenting for it's hilarious. So Trey White, Goalie Academy, shout out. And he would gold medal in hockey, of course. Anthony, that is our show. Viewers, listeners, thank you so much for liking. Thank you so much for following. If you haven't done, please hit that like, follow, subscribe to everything Built in Buffalo is giving you, especially this show. We really appreciate it. Facebook, YouTube, wherever you take in this show, please like and subscribe and follow. And Anthony, where can the listeners, viewers find you if they haven't already?
Find me on Twitter at pro__ant, pro 2 ANT. I host a show called Disguise Coverage on the Cover One Network. It's live every Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, and then automatically uploaded to all the podcasting apps and platforms immediately after the show. And then I also host a show on Cover One called the Cover One Film Room. I co-host that with Eric Turner. That's live every Wednesday at 5 p.m. right now. Might be going back to 7 p.m. once we're in season. And that show is purely film breakdowns, breaking down scheme, structure, X's and O's. On Disguise Coverage, I do that as well. Metrics, X's and O's, different things. That's what you get from me with everything, with Twitter and all the shows I do. You know, like you mentioned earlier, everything for me is very scheme, structure, X's and O's, the bones of what football is for the Bills, but also just league-wide, the schematics of all of it and how that chess game and chess piece, chess match nature of football works. And that's me.
Make sure you go follow Anthony and all his awesome breakdowns. All the guys at Cover One doing awesome stuff. Greg, Aaron, all the guys at Cover One. And I love to have you guys on our show. I've had Greg on before, and because you guys bring that like X's and O's dynamic to this show, which we don't typically do. So we love to have, like I said, that dichotomy at the top of the show. Before we depart here, again, thank you to all the viewers. We got to give a shout out to our sponsor, www.travelinggrowler.com. Quality koozie starting at just $5. Shop local, support local. Traveling Growler. Look at all those great products. Check out the website today and support local business. Also, our t-shirt store again, real quick. Teespring.com, wittyNOTfunny, or Google search Teespring, wittyNOTfunny. We're going to have some new designs coming out throughout the summer, updating the t-shirt store, but we got awesome designs, all pop culture references. In case this is your first time viewing, we like to mention a lot of pop culture things, music, TV, movies on this show in relation to the Bills and Sabres and things like that. So check out t-shirt store, all original designs, all very cool. So check that out today. Support the podcast, support Tony and I in our endeavors. And we got some big things planned. Like I said, we got a lot of not only the t-shirt store and new additions to that, but we have local artists doing a new theme song for us. We're going to have a new studio in a couple weeks. We got some big things cooking up on this podcast. So make sure, if you haven't yet, at Witty Sports 716, Twitter, Instagram, make sure you give us a follow. Facebook, TikTok, wittyNOTfunny Sports. Follow on all our platforms. We have over 800 now followers on Facebook. Thank you, everyone. We don't do anything other than repost the show on Facebook. So thank you, everyone, for following our Facebook page. And if you're either YouTube, Facebook, audio, Spotify, iTunes, we always like to say whether you give us 2 minutes or 2 hours of your time, we greatly appreciate it. And Anthony, we greatly appreciate you joining and taking, being the better Tony, I would say.
Damn. No comment.
Than our typical Tony.
No comment on that. No, I appreciate you having me. Like I said, we go way back. We saw each other at an event earlier this offseason at the McKinley Mall in Buffalo. And yeah, I this was super fun. I enjoyed the hell out of it. Anytime you want me, you got me. I appreciate you having me and having me come on, and for being flexible with my schedule. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Being flexible with ours as well. Yeah, let's not make it another couple years before we have you back on for sure.
Hell yeah.
Viewers, listeners, thank you. And as we always say, go Bills. And of course, stay witty out there, everyone. Thanks for listening, watching. Peace. Bye.